Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul joined alongside Robert Ziggy Ziegler out in California. Ziggy, a kind of a classic Paul and Ziggy show from back in the day when we used to do these back at Notre Dame. Just me and you.
Yeah, you, me, talking about some AFC West. It's going to be a good show.
Yeah, right. Never gets old, the AFC West. It's not like they've had the same division champion for year after year after year and dominant teams winning Super Bowl.
But everything around that team changes every year, and this is no exception.
Yep. So what we're going to do today is another division breakdown. We've already done the NFC East, the AFC East, and the NFC West. So this is the midway point for us here. We got 8 more teams, or 16 teams left. 4 more division videos coming out over the next 2 weeks. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Remember, you can become a member by clicking the link in the description. That'll take you over to our homepage, where all you have to do is hit join to become a member, participate in merch giveaways. And then, of course, thank you everyone for listening on YouTube. You can always catch us on audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. Please leave a review if you can. I think we have some 5-star reviews of our podcast, and nothing too low, actually. I don't think we have anything but 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So we appreciate that for everybody here. Right now, right as we started this, the Knicks, we said, have fully assembled their team for next season. So we don't talk a lot of basketball, but I'm jacked up as a Knicks fan with OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges completing the Villanova squad. So should be a fun basketball season. Maybe as the Knicks are running through the East next year, we even bring them up a few times on the show. But for now, we are a football show, AFC West. Why don't we start with, and remember how these go: the favorite, top challenger, sleeper team, and then the bottom feeder of the division. We'll start with the favorite, the Kansas City Chiefs. It has to be. It'd be fun to do somebody else, but you just can't. Coming off another Super Bowl win, back-to-back, 11-6 record on the season, 3rd overall seed. They went on the toughest, I think it was the toughest playoff path ever by seeds, where they had the Dolphins as the 6th seed in the first round, on the road to Buffalo to play the 2-seed Bills, on the road again to play Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, the 1 seed in the AFC, and then the Super Bowl, the 1-seeded San Francisco 49ers. And by no means was that an easy route when it came to the quarterbacks, going Tua, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, and the entire skill position players that the 49ers can throw at you. It was just another great year for the Chiefs, even though it's funny, Ziggy, the entire season they're talking about the Chiefs struggling on offense. They went from from first in yards per game and points per game in 2022 to 9th and 15th in points per game for the Chiefs. I don't think a lot of people remember just how much of a struggle it was at times on the offensive side of the football, but the defense made huge leaps. It was the first time Patrick Mahomes had anything other than really a mediocre defense. And it's a scary thought to see what the Chiefs could be if they are to figure things out on the offensive side the way they normally have. They added Marquise Brown this offseason, drafted Xavier Worthy out of Texas to kind of shore up that receiver position. So let me ask you, with the Chiefs, it can be hard to sometimes find topics to talk about because they're just so damn dominant. But what would you say is the biggest obstacle to them three-peating?
I mean, I think the answer just has to be what you said, namely the skill position players. Now, I know the Chiefs won a Super Bowl with a worse skill position room, but a lot went into that. They got some lucky breaks, like every team that wins the Super Bowl does. But the offense, even though Mahomes did his best to carry it, there were a lot of times in the regular season and in the playoffs where they struggled. I know everybody's going to remember that play where they won the Super Bowl, but not a lot of people remember that the Chiefs' offense struggled for almost that entire game. They're fortunate the 49ers had their own problems. And really, it's a complete inverse of what you saw when Mahomes first got there. So they've made some improvements, right? As he said, Richie James for Marquise Brown, Marquez Valdes-Scantling for Xavier Worthy. But those are players who are going to need to step up and perform right away. Because I'm just not convinced that the Chiefs are going to be able to repeat the particular magic of the 2023 season again.
I really like the Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown additions, though. We talked about Marquise Brown on the NFC West episode and how he's only there on a 1-year, $7 million contract. And Hollywood Brown, I never feel like he's lived up to the hype that's been generated around him. But dude, the guy does, like, I still think he's a very productive receiver. And for Kansas City, look what they had last year. I mean, they were working with Rashee Rice was a nice breakout candidate, but other than that, it was really a pretty bare room. I mean, Kadarius Toney, the fall off of Kadarius Toney was one of the big stories of the year. Like, if Xavier Worthy lives up to a first round pick and Marquise Brown comes in and plays anything like he has really throughout the start of his career, I think they're huge additions to the team. Would you not agree with that? Like, I think it's great for them.
I think they could be huge additions, but as you say, like Hollywood Brown, has he shown he can be a consistent, productive NFL receiver? No. Has Xavier Worthy shown he can be a consistent, productive NFL receiver? No. And as much as we don't want to admit it, Travis Kelce is starting to get old. He's 34. He'll be 35 by mid-October. There's a limit to how much you can ask of a guy who's been playing in one of the most physical positions in the NFL. This will be his 11th season. So I think the Chiefs.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say he's been around a while, and you have to keep in mind he's played 22 postseason games too. So that's added an extra season and change of wear on top of that. The Chiefs are going to need more out of him. Less out of him and more out of everyone else. We saw Andy Reid choosing to play him less in some critical games last year. I remember the Super Bowl when Travis Kelce blew up because he wasn't getting the first half playing time he wanted. Mm-hmm. Now that paid off because he was juiced up and ready to go in the second half. But that means you need other guys who can carry the load earlier in the game. So I think these have the potential to be big additions, and there's a decent chance they will. But again, the Chiefs are going into an offseason with unproven players playing important positions.
That's why you go get Irv Smith, Ziggy. You go get our boy Irv to fill the void.
Yeah, get Irv a ring. I mean, honestly, I'm excited to see, too, what Kingsley Suamatiata can do. The left tackle out of BYU.
No, I'm not really worried about the offense anymore at all. I think it's just a waste of time to talk about concerns with the Chiefs offense because Patrick Mahomes has shown time and time again now that he, when it matters, he'll deliver. So I actually think the biggest obstacle for them is collectively, like the defense coming back to earth, and second in yards per game, fourth passing yards per game, second in points per game allowed last season. I said it off the top. It was the best defense Mahomes has ever had. And when you mix Patrick Mahomes and elite defense, that's just a recipe for a Super Bowl. The one spot of that defense, though, the run defense was 28th in EPA per play allowed. They were 18th in rushing yards per game allowed. Maybe that's one spot. Now, they brought back Chris Jones. That was huge. They valued him more than L'Jarius Sneed, who they traded off to the Titans. I think that at corner, they should probably be fine. I mean, they have a luxury of already having Trent McDuffie there as the second guy last season, believe it or not. Kind of crazy that you move off L'Jarius Sneed and you still have a number one corner on the roster. But I would say it's just maybe that defensive line shutting down the run a little bit could be. Look, with Kansas City, you're really kind of searching for problems. But that would be the one spot I would pay attention to. Let's move on to the top challenger here. And I think, in the AFC West, it's funny where 2 years ago, we were just talking about how he was like, all right, pick your top challenger. The Raiders are making all these moves. Broncos got Russell Wilson. And really, all of them, even including the Chargers, who are our pick as the top challenger, all of them have been pretty disappointing the past few seasons here. But the Chargers now, they come into an offseason where the huge news is Jim Harbaugh coming in. And I think everyone in LA was happy about that because he's the track record of success for Jim Harbaugh. Everywhere he goes, he wins. Brings in Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator, Jesse Minter coming over with him from Michigan as the defensive coordinator. It's funny, Greg Roman, I didn't realize, but he worked with Harbaugh. I forgot he worked with him at Stanford and also in San Francisco. So a lot of consistency there, bringing a winning formula all together, coordinators to the head coach. But the Chargers had a pretty crazy offseason besides that, too. A lot of familiar faces out the door. Keenan Allen, gone. Mike Williams, gone. Austin Eckler, gone. The skill position players that Chargers fans, fantasy football players have come to know, they're not there anymore. It's a new era of Chargers on the offensive side. And, we'll see how we'll see the effect of that pretty early in the season. The big question, we'll start here. The big question for the Chargers is how large will the skill position losses loom in LA? Do you think that Justin Herbert's good enough to overcome all that?
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers got worse in almost every way when you're looking at the skill position players. And really, Austin Eckler wasn't great, but I'm not convinced Gus Edwards is going to be the answer. Gerald Everett wasn't great, but Will Disley hasn't been the same since he ruptured that Achilles. So why do I believe in the Chargers? There's two ways I think they're going to improve this year. One, this is the obvious one. They swapped out Brandon Staley for Jim Harbaugh. Yeah. That is a huge improvement. There's no question about it, right? You are bringing in a head coach who's had success everywhere he's gone, who's shown that he can coach a team to the Super Bowl, who has shown that when he gets himself surrounded by the right people, at least for a while, things go really well. Mm-hmm. So that should completely change the culture and the way things operate. The other thing, and I hate to say this about the Chargers, is I think they're going to get a little bit less unlucky. You know, you look at some of their games last year. The Chargers, they went 5-12, right? Terrible record. But Easton Stick went 0-4. They lost to Miami by 2, Dallas by 3, Detroit by 3, Green Bay by 3. They were so close to beating so many good teams, and things didn't quite break their way. You know, they lost to the Titans by 3. That's a game they could have won. There was the Vegas blowout,
the opener
certainly doesn't have
the opener. Yeah, Tennessee. Yeah.
No, and then there's that Vegas blowout that doesn't happen if Herbert's playing. If a few of those things break their way, this would have been a 7 or 8 win team, even with Easton Stick losing a bunch of games. So this team has potential, probably not to win the division. I mean, there's a reason why the Chiefs are favored more than any other team to win their division, but they should be competitive.
Yeah, and I think Justin Herbert, a lot of people have been in our comments section after our quarterback rankings. I had him 5th. You had him 3rd in the NFL. A lot of people are in the comments section saying you guys are crazy for putting Justin Herbert that high. And I don't know. I think that's kind of, I think you're forgetting how good Justin Herbert is if you don't think he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I can understand if you put him maybe 6 or 7, but you can't go much lower than that. The guy has the complete package, and the Chargers have been in a tough spot for a couple years now. I mean, Staley was just a disaster. It is going to be a little difficult at first. There is definitely going to be some adjusting with, again, you said it, Austin Eckler to Gus Edwards, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams to Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston. You know, you're going to need Ladd McConkey to step up as a rookie. He's just going to have to. You're relying on some guys to make progress. But if there was, one of 5 quarterbacks in the league you'd want leading that charge, I would take Justin Herbert. So I think the offense will be fine. It's also worth noting that Harbaugh has been in situations, and their GM, Horitz, what's his first name? Let me find it here. Horitz, whatever, I can't.
Joseph.
Joe Horitz. So just Joseph. So Joe and Harbaugh, I mean, Horitz had success in Baltimore without a lethal passing attack. Harbaugh at Michigan without a lethal passing attack immediately. Like, they build up in the trenches, and you saw that immediately with the Joe Alt selection in the NFL draft. So I'm not too worried about the Chargers in the long term. This year might be a little bit of growing pains, but I think by 2025, they have a lot of cap space. This team will be when you have a quarterback like Herbert, you're going to be back on the map pretty quickly. Just one additional note here. A lot of people thought that they might lose Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, but they brought them both back. Bosa's only played in 14 games over the past 2 years. Mack's 33 years old. So the defense, the secondary is really the big concern there in LA. Derwin James dropped off a bit. So for Chargers fans, if the defense, if the secondary plays well and the defense can take some steps forward under Harbaugh, I mean, now all of a sudden, it's not out of the possibility that the Chargers could be a wild card team at all this year, I think, especially when you have Herbert leading the way. Yeah, that's crazy to say they're a card contender.
I mean, do you know what Justin Herbert's record is when the defense allows fewer than 28 points?
No, what?
He's 25-14. He's won almost 80% of those games.
Yeah, it's
so if the defense is and 28 points is a huge number, right? I mean, you look at Patrick Mahomes' career, the Chiefs have given up, and Mahomes had some bad defenses, have given up 28 or more points in about 30% of his starts. Justin Herbert, it's been about 55% of his starts. So if you just put a functional defense around Herbert, he wins games.
Yeah, I really like the way they approached this offseason because they had to make some big cuts. Like, you were going to lose at least 2 of the 3, or you were going to at least lose a few players out of the Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Bosa, Mack. They decided to keep the defensive guys, and they're good enough where I actually think they can be competitive, but they didn't rush into anything. They didn't hand out any crazy contracts where you go scratch your head and are like, really, is it worth investing that much into this guy to try and be competitive right now? I thought they did a really nice job of remaining competitive for this upcoming season, but also not over-investing in anything. So I think they'll be fine with Harbaugh. I'm very excited to see what they become. Okay, the Raiders here, the sleeper team. I'm sorry, Broncos fans, you just can't put them anywhere else. The sleeper team, the Raiders, they were 3-5 under Josh McDaniels. I mean, that was a absolute disaster scenario for Vegas fans, and then he eventually gets canned. Antonio Pierce comes in, takes over. The team finds new life. I believe it was the Giants who they played in the first game with Antonio Pierce, and I was sitting back going, it's got to be a Giants spot, right? Like you have to think the Giants coming in with a new coach. The Raiders are about to give up. You got to go New York here on a bet. And I think Jack was on the other side of things and said, absolutely not. This team will be fired up for Antonio Pierce, and the Raiders just kicked their ass. And once it was crazy how you saw Vegas just with this new life under Antonio Pierce. Aiden O'Connell was starting every game. They finished 5-4. Defense took huge leaps forward. I mean, look at this here. Points per game allowed from when Antonio Pierce took over. I think it was the first 8 weeks. They were first in points per game allowed, 15.3. It was just a completely different team. And they come into this offseason, the big question was, who's going to be the quarterback? And unfortunately for Vegas, they just weren't really in a position where they could go out and get a free agent. Kirk Cousins was mentioned a little bit. He was never going to go there, though. And then in the draft, they just weren't high enough. Everyone who needed a quarterback was in front of them, and they couldn't trade up. So they wind up keeping Aiden O'Connell. They signed Gardner Minshew, however, who's coming off a really good season with the Colts, just one game away, one pass away, really, from a playoff spot. Do you think that the Raiders, though, when you look at all their offseason moves, they've drafted Brock Bowers, they signed Christian Wilkins to a big deal. Of course, Minshew, I just said. Do you think that they put themselves in a good position for their rebuild, or did they make enough? Were the moves they made the wrong ones when you look at how aggressive they were for certain guys?
Well, the Raiders didn't put themselves in a good position for their rebuild because, at least as they seem to see it, they're not rebuilding. Right? The Christian Wilkins deal they signed is a deal that says right? we're one guy away on defense from having a great defense. The Brock Bowers pick says we think that the most important thing is getting a guy who we think we can produce day one out on the field. Mm-hmm. Right? So this team is... Antonio Pierce clearly is worried about his job a little bit, and that's not a bad thing. He wants to come out and show that they can be competitive. And if Gardner Minshew can be that guy, he doesn't have to be elite. He just has to be a decent quarterback. This is absolutely a team that can make the playoffs. I mean, just look at how they finished last season, right? You
don't think O'Connell.
Minshew will start. You don't sign Minshew to a deal like that unless he's going to start.
Okay.
But you look at how they finished their season, right? They blew out the Chargers. They beat the Chiefs. Tough loss to a hot Colts team, and then they beat the Broncos.
No, they ended
right. So they beat everyone in their division and played a close game against a decent team. That is what they are looking at when they are deciding right now that it's their time to go in. So, do I like what they're doing from a team building perspective? Not particularly. I think they should be playing it slower. I don't think they should be handing out big deals. But I can't blame them either. This Raiders team, it's been a long time since they have had any success. They see a window where the Chargers are on the way up.
A window?
The Broncos...
What's the window?
I'm not talking a Super Bowl window here, but look, the Chargers are clearly on the way up. The Broncos are probably on the way up. This is, if you're trying to get, whether it's winning the division or just winning a playoff game, if you're trying to get into the playoffs and do anything, this year is your time. And their decision is we're willing to go in with that and live with the consequences if it sets the rebuild back a little bit. I think that's fine.
Yeah. A lot of people in the NFL view it as just get to the playoffs is a success. And I understand that, because if you get in, you have a shot. Like the Bucs last year, get in, they're a divisional playoff team. They could have beat Detroit, and you never know. You just get hot any given Sunday sort of a thing. With the Raiders, though, I don't mind going after Minshew. You couldn't go anywhere else at quarterback. I do think he'll keep you competitive. It was just when I looked at the other decisions, Christian Wilkins, big contract. I don't know if I'm giving him that much money to he's good. Christian Wilkins is very good. Big contract.
Oh. Do you know who the last quarterback the Raiders beat in the playoffs was?
that the Raiders beat?
In the playoffs, who the last quarterback they beat was?
No, I have no idea.
Steve McNair in 2002 in that Super Bowl run. So if you're wondering why do they feel desperate? Why are they going in? Why does it seem like all they want to do is make it to the playoffs and maybe win a game? It's because that would be the best season this team has had in 22 years.
I guess so. I thought they had a chance to trade Devontae Adams, get some value for him. He's 31 years old, but he's still a very good receiver. And who knows? If Adams drops off a bit, you lose all the trade value. It's contract. I think his contract. This was the last year you could trade him for. It's a ton of money. I need to double check that. But it's a weird spot. So many teams are in these positions where it's like, would you rather blow it all up or try to compete, even though you're probably not going to win? And in the Raiders' case, I think they're closer to, it's a really young team in many spaces. So if you sold Adams, if you put a better effort into next season looking for a quarterback, Bowers is young. A lot of the edge rushers, or you had some young edge rushers in addition to Max Crosby. It just felt like a weird time to be like, all right, we're going for this. When, like, how far are you really going to go? I mean, the AFC's tough. So I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I do agree with you with Minshew, and it has to be Minshew. They could compete for the 7th seed, but Raiders fans, let us know in the comment section. I
will say this. I don't want to sound too new. I would not be surprised to see this Raiders team end up with the top wild card spot. They were a legitimate 8-9, could have been 9-8 team last year. They improved at quarterback. They improved at defensive line. They improved in some other positions. They improved at head coach majorly. That's a team that can win 10 or 11 games if things break their way. That's all I'm saying. So I can see why. If you are getting the top wild card spot, you're going on the road facing the worst team that won their division in the AFC. Winnable. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good team. It's a better roster than people think. If you say what teams can compete for the wild card to the casual NFL fan, no one will mention the Raiders. But I mean, up and down, if Tyree Wilson can break out, Crosby, Wilkins, Tyree Wilson, pretty good D line there. I was a little surprised they didn't take a cornerback in the draft when they had their pick of Quinion Mitchell was just sitting there, and a lot of people I know wanted to take him. Because your cornerback room is a little questionable. You're relying on some guys to, Jack Jones is your cornerback one. He was released from New England during the season. And he stepped up when he got to Vegas. He certainly stepped up, but there's pressure there to relive that season after you were just cut the year before. So I don't know. I feel Brock Bowers, I always like having more weapons, but I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of their offseason, but I do think that they could compete. So maybe that's all that they want, like you said. It's been 20.
Well, you know what Raiders fans can say going into this offseason or going into this season?
What?
At least we're not the Broncos.
At least we're not the Broncos. Yeah, our bottom feeder, the Denver Broncos, had their first year and only year of the Sean Payton, Russell Wilson experiment. Starts off blistering with that 1-5 start. 1-5 start, including a 70-20 loss to the Dolphins. Producer Zach was going crazy during that game. Then they get hot, though. Denver gets hot. They win 5 games in a row, including that Sunday night football game against our Vikings. Some Russell Wilson magic. All of a sudden, they're 6-5. Playoff talk. Unfortunately for them, they end the year 2-4, and that put them at 8-9. They missed the playoffs. Move on from Russell Wilson this offseason, but not without an $85 million dead cap charge over the next 2 years, the largest in NFL history. And that left the hole. Now it's all right. What are we going to do at the quarterback position? And Sean Payton and staff decided to go with Bo Nix in the NFL draft. They make a couple moves this offseason. They add Zach Wilson to the mix at QB with Jarrett Stidham, forming a quarterback room that has kind of been mocked. Maybe not. I don't like mocking anyone on this show, but that quarterback room, it's a lot of question marks there. You're hoping Bo's the guy. They add Josh Reynolds. They make some moves along the defensive line, but some really big losses, Ziggy. Some key losses for the Broncos this offseason. Lloyd Cushenberry III, their center, gone. Jerry Jeudy, he's also gone. They trade him to the Browns. And Justin Simmons, their star safety for so long, also out the door. So you see a lot of star power leave Denver, already a team that struggled so much last season. It puts Bo Nix in a tough position to succeed. And I don't think anyone expects him to succeed immediately. But I'll say with all of that, gone. What do you expect from Bo Nix next year? Like, how high is the ceiling in Denver?
It's hard to know how to evaluate that, because if you imagine you were to take all of a team's like really good wins and really bad losses and sort of add that up to get a number, I don't think there's a team that would have a larger number than the Broncos, right? Because you look at the team last year, they had some great wins, right? They beat Buffalo at Buffalo, right? They beat Kansas City at home pretty bad. They beat Green Bay. They beat the Chargers. But then you look at those losses, right? They lost at home versus New England. They lost by 50 on the road to the Dolphins. They lost at home to Zach Wilson versus the Commanders. They got blown out in Detroit. Like, there were so many games that were great and so many games that were terrible that I think what you're hoping Bo Nix provides for this team is just a little bit of consistency, which is tough to ask of a rookie. But if he can play, he doesn't need to be as good as Russell Wilson at his best. But if his worst is better than Russell Wilson's worst, I think this is a guy who contributes some stability, because you look at why the Broncos drafted him. They want a guy who can execute the system, right? Who can just play ball, get the ball where it needs to be on time, who will make the short passes he needs to, who's a threat to run a little bit, who's a threat deep when the opportunity comes. And that is Bo Nix, right? This is the best quarterback to team fit in the NFL draft.
Yep.
So you just have to hope, I think, that while things have gotten a little bit worse around him, he can just play decent ball week in, week out. And if he can do that without getting overwhelmed, which will be Sean Payton's big challenge, this is a team that could be competitive.
I mean, by competitive, what do you think in win total? Like 5 or 6?
They won 8 games last year. They lost some players, but they didn't lose. You know, it's not like they lost any all-pros. They lost decent players, but those guys are replaceable, right? Lloyd Cushenberry, every Broncos fan knows he has his flaws.
Yeah,
Jerry Jeudy, he was pretty good, but it's not like they lost Devontae Adams.
Yep, 100%.
If they won 8 last year, say maybe they should have won 6 or 7. Is Bo Nix coming in and winning 7 or 8 games for them implausible? No. But it's tough for me to see it.
Yeah, I'm just looking through their schedule right now. You open at Seattle, Pittsburgh, at Tampa, at the Jets. I don't think I see a win there. And then 3 on the road, to be fair. Versus Vegas, maybe you get a win there. Versus the Chargers, maybe. At New Orleans, versus Carolina, you could win that game. So like I'm going then at Baltimore, Kansas City, Atlanta, at Vegas, Cleveland. I mean, that's Indy, Chargers, Cincy, Kansas City. I mean, I see like 4 wins, maybe.
But they beat a lot of those teams last year.
They did, but Russell Wilson was playing good. Like when they beat Buffalo, Russell Wilson was playing good football. When they beat the Vikings, and it is crazy when you look at their 5-game win streak. You said it: Green Bay, Kansas City, Buffalo, Minnesota, Cleveland. 4 playoff teams. Like 4 teams in the divisional, or 3 of them in the divisional round. Sorry, 4 of them, right? No, Cleveland got blown out by Houston. But
I'm saying, when we say Russ played good against the Bills, right? He threw for 190 yards, 2 touchdowns of like an 80% completion percentage. That is something that you hope Bo Nix can step in and do.
Yeah, sure. It's a lot to ask for a rookie. Those are some tough games there that we were reading off. Again, with all the rookies, it sounds repetitive, but it's kind of just the case. You really just want to see progression during the season. And for the Broncos, if Bo Nix comes in and is serviceable and just gets better week by week, that's a huge win for them, because they are, there's not a lot of talent on the team right now, and they're in a tough spot financially because of Wilson. So it's going to be a rebuild. Like, this is a process for Denver. This is not going to be, the Bears can be competitive by midseason, like playoff competitive. This is probably going to be a multi-year thing for the Broncos. But if you get the quarterback, like, that is the piece. So that's the king, so to say, if we're talking chess. So like, I'm curious to see if the fit is actually as productive as people are saying it could be. I'm a little hesitant to buy in on Bo, but that is really the entire Broncos season is just going to be evaluating Bo Nix. Nothing else matters.
Well, I think that's true. I think that if this team's not reasonably competitive, it could get very ugly very fast. Because Sean Payton is 60 years old, and I don't think anybody would describe him as patient. Right, he didn't come to Denver to be in a rebuild, coach a rookie, sort of take a franchise from rags to riches. He came to win Super Bowls.
I mean, but what are you going to do about it? Like, that's exactly where you are right now. Are you saying
if Bo Nix doesn't look good, he might just quit, or things could get really bad really
Make
fast?
a movie
We've
about
seen
that.
it when.
That's right. I want to see the Sean Payton movie about him quitting the Broncos midseason. What bullshit to get the Kevin James, such a likable guy like Kevin James for the. I mean, he was suspended a year for a reason, and you go and put a movie about him that makes Sean Payton look like the most likable guy in the world. It pissed me off.
You have to remember, Paul and I have a little bit of a grudge against Sean Payton for certain activities that they committed against the Minnesota Vikings.
I couldn't believe how well he was portrayed. I mean, obviously in the movie, yeah, I get it. It was about him, but I was so pissed off watching that. Like, it was a punishment. They made him sound like a victim here. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but this is where, on the other side, this is where Sean Payton really gets to prove that he's something. Right? I mean, you've got people have said if Jack were on the show right now, he'd be saying that Sean Payton was carried by Drew Brees his whole career. And didn't that guy have 3 losing seasons in a row with Drew Brees?
Yeah.
If he's able to turn this around, that would be a major feather in the Sean Payton legacy cap, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I
thought
he was a good turnaround from where the Broncos were just a year before that.
Yeah, but going 8 and 9 and 3rd in the AFC West, like you're not getting much credit for that. That's not going on your Hall of Fame plan.
No, it's not. Right? But I did think that after the 1-5 start to bounce back and be competitive, like, if that's Hackett coaching, not to throw a stray at Nathaniel Hackett, but I don't know what happens to the Broncos last year if they're 1-5. I mean, we saw it. It's a disaster. I thought Payton did a good job getting that team. I thought him and Russ did a good job getting that team competitive again. But yeah, it was a bad ending to the season. But yeah, it's not high. The stakes really aren't that high in Denver. I guess you could say Sean Payton.
I think they are internally. I was
gonna say if Sean Payton quitting is on your radar, then they are high. But from the outside perspective, it's okay. Let's just see progression from Bo. This might be the most you'll hear people, in a national-esque or like a broader league overview talk about the Broncos. They're an interesting team though. Like they have a lot. They have 2 very interesting, polarizing people for next year in Sean Payton and Bo Nix.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, when you talk about teams that things could go well for, things could go poorly for, right now the national media is not talking much about this team. If things go poorly for them, it will be one of the biggest stories in the NFL. Right? You'll have Pat Surtain asking for a trade request. You'll hear all of these leaks coming from Payton's camp, from the Knicks camp, all of that. So that's really, I can't say that I love seeing that stuff. But if you're looking for drama in the NFL, keep an eye on the Broncos, because I think that's the most they have to offer this year.
So let's go into a couple of the predictions and we'll get out of here. The non-quarterback player to watch in the AFC West. Who are you looking at this season, Ziggy? Non-quarterback.
I am excited. I feel like I keep picking offense for these, but the offensive players continue to excite me. I really want to see what Davante Adams can do with a better quarterback. I get that Gardner Minshew isn't elite, but he is a guy who can get guys the ball and can be a very productive player. Watching Davante, it was tough when he was with the Packers, but now that he's not with the Packers, I can admit it. Watching Davante Adams play football and play football well is just a world of fun, isn't it?
He's so good.
And even though he's on the older side, he's been very good with Vegas for quite some time now. Getting another double-digit touchdown Davante Adams season, I think, is well within the possibility. The Raiders should be a decent team. They should be competitive. I really want to see what he's able to do.
Yeah, I like that pick with Davante. I thought you could also go Brock Bowers. I'm excited to just watch him. It's his early pick for the Raiders, earlier than some people thought he should go. But if Brock Bowers, can carry over just some of the hype, then I'd be pretty excited about that. Yeah, it's so hard not to pick the offensive side of the ball. Like that's just where all the guys that you want to watch are. I'm kind of leaning towards Marquise Brown or Xavier Ward. Like those Chiefs receivers, I think I'll go with Marquise Brown. I have this bad tendency of picking 2 guys I seem to be picking like position.
Every single time so far, you picked 2 guys.
Yeah, I've been picking position groups, which is kind of a cop out. But I want to see how those Chiefs receivers do. No, you know what? I'm gonna switch it up. I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston. How do you like that? Quentin Johnston and
really?
I don't have a lot of faith in him, but remember, this is a first round pick just a year ago. And someone out of those 3 has to step between Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Joshua Palmer. Someone's got to step up. It's probably going to be Palmer, but someone needs to become the number 1 receiver out in LA. I don't, Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst are your tight ends. I don't think either of those guys are going to get it done. And Gus Edwards is not, an electric. He's a capable running back, but like, where's the offense going to come from for the Chargers? Who's Herbert going to go to? One of those guys has to step up. And I Quentin Johnston's, to me, he's the one can he get over some of those drops of the issues he had last season? That's a lot of, first round pick. It's a lot of capital to invest in someone. And if he just flames out immediately, it almost feels like Kevin White without the injuries. You know what I mean? For the Bears. So I'm watching.
I will just say, yeah. So I get why you are watching him. I will just throw a little bit of cold water on that, which is he had so many opportunities last year.
It was horrible.
He started 10 games. He was consistently one of the worst starting receivers in the entire NFL. I mean, you could make a 10-minute highlight reel from his rookie season of all the times he screwed up and still not have half the plays.
I know.
PFF had him as one of the worst receivers in the game. Like, he was just awful. And it is very, very rare. It's happened a couple of times, but it's extraordinarily rare that a first round pick wide receiver looks awful their rookie year and then turns it around and becomes great. But who knows, right? You know who had a bunch of the same problems Quentin Johnston did was Devontae Adams. You can go back and look. There were a lot of stories published saying the Packers should cut Devontae Adams. They never amount to anything. He had 2 seasons in a row under 500 yards, starting a bunch of games. And then he just exploded in 2016. So who knows?
Yeah, I think Joshua Palmer, you've had some big Joshua Palmer games. There's been a few of them for the Chargers. If not Johnston, Ladd McConkey will be he's going to be a lot of fun to watch too. That, taking that Georgia kind of, he's not the fastest guy in the world. Ladd McConkey could surprise some people. It's a very productive receiver. Okay, in college at least. Preseason Division MVP. We even have to do this. It's Mahomes.
Yeah, it's Mahomes. It's if Mahomes breaks his arm and tears his ACL, as long as it's past week 9 or 10, he's still the division MVP.
This might be the clear. It's clearly Mahomes 1. Then you're probably pretty clearly at Justin Herbert 2. And then you take your pick from there.
Then who knows?
Then who cares? The predictions now. All right. It's got to be exactly what we said, right? Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Broncos.
I don't know. I might have talked myself into putting the Raiders above the Chargers. You know what? The Chargers always have terrible luck, don't they? Things always fail to go their way. If there is anywhere that can break the luck and good spirit of the Harbaughs, it would be the Chargers. So yeah, F it. Give me the Chiefs at 1, the Raiders at 2, the Chargers at 3, the Broncos at 4.
Do you think, is this the division with the best coaches in football? Right? Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh.
I don't know, the AFC North, I think, is better.
No, what you got? So you have, the West, you have Reid, you have Harbaugh, you have Antonio Pierce and Sean Payton, and in the North you have again the other Harbaugh, John, Mike Tomlin, Zach Taylor, and Stefanski.
Yeah,
that's really good. I'm Stefanski. I know he won Coach of the Year. I
trust him more than I trust Antonio Pierce. I trust him more than I trust Sean Payton at this point.
Yeah,
the bottom's a little lower, but it's close. But the AFC West certainly is some of the best coaches.
Yeah, no, I mean it is crazy thinking about 2 years ago just how crazy hyped it was, and here we are now where you're like, the Raiders could make some noise. The Chargers you're hoping are good in a year. It's the Chargers actually though, to be honest, the Chargers are someone, if they just came out and had a great season, I think they're being underrated. I think that was such a big culture problem in LA with Staley, and like they had a losing mentality going in. I think the Chargers can be the team that you circle, and though like there's a huge jump coming for them if a few of those offensive guys step up. Like you're going to see how good Herbert is, and I know you know that, but the Chargers might be my biggest sleeper pick for huge, or in terms of like biggest win differential going into next season. I might pick the Chargers. So. All right, there you have it. The AFC West will be back next week. I think it's right now the North, but I'm not sure. It could be the South. I'm not sure which we're going to have coming out, so it'll be a surprise for people. But we'll see you then. Ziggy, any closing words?
It's no, I don't really have anything. Thanks to our members. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. But we'll see you next week.
All right, we'll see you then.